Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Naruto x Cynthia? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the XXX-Rated for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. Naruto Namikaze was a man who many would have thought to have seen it all. The blonde Konoha shinobi probably thought the exact same thing himself. And as things were, one really could not fault the whiskered blonde for thinking as such. Naruto Namikaze had blue eyes and sun-kissed blonde, spiky hair. Naruto's most prominent physical characteristics, however, were the whisker marks on his face. He also had an unfavorable or rather unhealthy addiction for a dish called ramen and for the color orange. Naruto was someone who could sit down at a restaurant and inhale, yes I repeat inhale, all of the ramen in his bowl within a single minute. Now many people found this to be, well, rather for the unknown of a better word, quite gross. Then there was also the fact that Naruto simply refused to wear any attire if said attire did not consist of his favorite color, orange. It did not matter how much of how little of it there was, but for Naruto orange was a must. Back to the topic at hand, Naruto had seen and done many crazy things in his life. But he never imagined that something like this would ever happen to him. Not ever, not even in his wildest dreams. Naruto was currently falling continuously in an endless void of nothingness. He did not know where he was going to end up. So he was currently doing the one and only thing that he could do. He waited and then waited some more to see what fate would throw at him this time. Now some of you may be asking the question of how Naruto ended up in a gigantic mess like this. Well, to answer your question, Naruto and the rest of the allied shinobi forces were on the verge of winning of the Fourth Great Shinobi World War. They had managed to pull the tailed beast out from Obito Uchiha, but then Naruto did not count on Obito using Kamui at the very last second. Nor did Naruto expect for something to go horribly wrong with the technique as well. So now here he was. In a dark, white void with nothing to do except keep his fingers crossed, be patient and hope for the best. Naruto Namikaze was not a patient person. Not at all. Saying that he was a patient person would be the equivalent of saying that golems could fly, and that was, to be frank, complete and utter bullshit of the highest level, simply because there was no truth to that statement at all. It did not help that Naruto could not hear the voice of his partner and friend, the nine-tailed demon fox, who went by the name of Kurama, anymore as well. Naruto was unsure of how time passed in the realm that he was currently located, or rather trapped in right now. So after what felt like hours, maybe days even, Naruto felt a small glimmer of hope as he saw himself getting closer to a bright light. Naruto was not certain of how much time had passed while he was trapped in whatever this thing was called. The only thing he knew for sure was that he wanted to get out of wherever in the seven seas he was in right now as soon as possible. Within the next few minutes, Naruto felt certain emotions course through his veins when he saw the light get brighter and brighter. His body was approaching what looked to be the end of a tunnel. To name a few of these emotions would be excitement, nervousness, and fear. Excitement that he would have a chance to be rid of his current predicament, nervousness because he did not know where he was going to end up, and fear as he imagined what horrible, horrible things could possibly be waiting for him on the other side. Then again, whatever was thrown at him could not be worse than a rampaging 10 tails, right? Right. As Naruto saw his body pass through what he presumed was the exit, he closed his eyes in anticipation as he had no idea of what was to come. So imagine his surprise when he felt his body make impact with a hard and solid surface. As Naruto slowly got back to his feet and rubbed his eyes to get the dust that had accumulated out of them, it did not take the blonde-haired shinobi very long to figure out what had just happened. He had fallen from the sky and come crashing down on the ground below. Hard. Yeah, really hard. However, this was nothing that he could not handle. He was Naruto Namikaze after all, and he did not whine like some giant crybaby. Well, not if he could help it, at least. Taking a look around at his surroundings, Naruto found that he did not recognize where he was at all. Nope, he had not the slightest clue of his current location. So the next thing that the number one most unpredictable knucklehead ninja of the village hidden in the leaves decided to do was enter Sage Mode and see if he could recognize anyone's chakra signature nearby. After that plan failed, Naruto made a small checklist of all the things he had discovered in the last 10 to 15 minutes. He still had his chakra with him. He could still enter Sage Mode. He did not recognize any of the energy signatures in the nearby vicinity. Most of the energy signatures of the humans here felt like they belonged to civilians, as they were all very small. There was also a different type of energy signature that belonged to another group, which Naruto sensed that he knew were not humans. They felt more like creatures or animals to the blonde. Besides that, Naruto found that he could not summon toads anymore. No matter how many times he bit his thumb to draw blood and went through the required hand seals, no toad would pop up. Naruto discovered that he could still use most of his other jutsu. And last but certainly not least, Naruto had no idea what had happened to Kurama. It was lucky for him that there was no one nearby where he had landed, or rather crash-landed, to see him doing all the stuff he did in the short span of time he was in this new world, as he chose to call it, or Naruto was sure that it would have probably done a lot more harm than good. Looking in the direction of the west, Naruto saw that there was a town nearby and decided to start walking over there to see if he could go and get himself some answers as to what the heck was going on around here. Thus, this is how the tale of Naruto Namikaze in the Pokemon universe began. Special time skip technique, 7 years later. Alright, trainers and fans alike. It is finally time. This is it, this is the battle that we have all been eagerly awaiting. That bout is finally here. Will Cynthia, the champion of the Sinnoh League, clinch the match? Spoke the announcer as the camera zoomed in towards a woman. She had long blonde hair and gray eyes. She was currently wearing a pair of black trousers, a long black coat with black feathers rimming the cuffs and running down the end of the coat, and a large teardrop that was shaped like an ornament on the center of the coat, which was probably used as a button. She was also donning a black top underneath. Her outfit was finished with black heels and a yellow stripe on each of her shoes. For accessories, she was wearing a large, black feathery scarf around her neck with a pair of hair clips in her hair, both resembling two teardrop-shaped objects conjoined with a pale yellow stripe. Cynthia had her Garchomp by her side. Garchomp was a bipedal, dragon-like Pokemon that was primarily dark blue in color, with a red underbelly that covered the middle of its abdomen, to its jaws, and then to the undersides of both of its arms. Underneath the red was a gold diamond shape as well as a gold cross on its snout. Garchomp had appendages that resembled that of a jet or plane's engines, giving it an appearance similar to a hammerhead. It had 4 fins, one on each arm, one dorsal fin and another on its tail that resembled a shark's tail fin. It had spikes on its hind limbs and arms as well as sharp claws. Its eyes had black scaras and gold-colored irises. Or will Lucian of the Elite Four pull off a massive upset and become the new champion of Sinnoh? Finished the announcer as the camera this time zoomed in towards a man. He had neatly kept blue hair and was wearing a red button-up shirt with a matching pair of red long pants. He was also wearing a pair of glasses which gave him a smart look. Lucian was battling using his Bronzong. Bronzong was a large Pokemon resembling a blue and green bell with 2 arms coming out of its sides. It had a hollow body and a yoke attached at the top. Its face could be best described as being a totem pole design. Bronzong had 2 round, red eyes with blue and green irises and a rectangular mouth with 1 visible row of square teeth. It had several darker, rectangular markings on its body. Bronzong used Flash Cannon. Hearing the command, Bronzong flipped around and aimed its bottom at Cynthia's Garchomp. It then gathered silver energy inside its body and then fired a silver beam of energy at the aforementioned Garchomp. Bronzong's Flash Cannon has managed to score a direct hit. Is it all over for Garchomp? It is a spooky maze out on the field as we wait for the results. How will Garchomp survive a smash like that? Spoke the announcer in a mysterious, when I say that I mean really mysterious, voice to keep the viewers on the edge as the whole arena was covered in a cloud of black smoke. In a cafe. In a cafe somewhere in the Sinnoh region, a group of trainers were watching the brawl between Lucian's Bronzong and Cynthia's Garchomp. Amongst the group was Ash Ketchum and his 2 friends Brock and Dawn. "This is just what I would expect from a battle between Cynthia and Lucian," said Brock. This battle was meeting all his expectations so far. It had been full of energy and power right from the start. Brock was wearing an orange vest and a green shirt. His shoes and backpack were blue in color. "This battle is supercharged," added an excited Dawn. Who wouldn't be excited watching a match between 2 of the top trainers in the Sinnoh region? Dawn's outfit consisted of a black mini dress along with a white undershirt and side AV-shaped neck with a short pink skirt. On her head, she was wearing a white-colored beanie with a pink poke ball print on it. She was also wearing a pair of gold hair clips that held up her hair in front. On her feet, she was wearing a pair of pink knee-high boots with black socks underneath. She also had a small yellow backpack which held all of her personal belongings. On the TV. "I don't believe it! Garchomp has come out of that attack unscathed," exclaimed the announcer, who was mildly surprised upon seeing Garchomp emerge from the smoke, looking like it had hardly taken any damage at all from the earlier hit. Garchomp used Giga Impact. Garchomp proceeded to fly into the air, and its body became surrounded by spiraling orange streaks. Then, a purple energy sphere surrounded Garchomp's body, and it flew into Bronzong with great force. The power behind this blow was so great that despite being not very effective on a steel-type Pokémon like Bronzong, it still succeeded in knocking it out. That, folks, was a prime example of Garchomp's Giga Impact. "Bronzong is down for the count," said the announcer as he saw the referee declare that Bronzong was unable to continue battling. In the cafe. "The champion is top of the line," said Ash, who was eating a tuna sandwich. Ash was wearing a closed jacket. He was also wearing a white undershirt as well as a hat, a pair of jeans and a pair of sneakers. His backpack was green in color with one pocket, and had a white poke ball design with a red button. Ash was also donning a pair of open-fingered gloves. "I don't even think that Lucian stands a chance," said Dawn, voicing her opinion. Despite how strong Lucian was, it just seemed like Cynthia had too much to offer. "Well, in all of Sinnoh, she is trainer number 1. Stated Brock in a matter-of-fact tone. There was a reason Cynthia was the champion after all. Just then a random trainer ran into the cafe with some big news. "Hey guys, you have got to come and check this out. It seems that the champion just turned up at Amity Square," said the trainer to his group of friends. Due to the fact that he said this so loud, many others were able to overhear it. This revelation got the attention of almost everyone in the building. As if some hidden signal had been given from above, all the trainers in the cafe rushed off to the Amity Square in the hopes of meeting the Sinnoh region's renowned champion, Cynthia, at some random road leading to the Amity Square some time earlier. It is here that we find our Sinnoh champion, who is currently at an ice cream stand, assuming a thinking pose while trying to decide on what flavor of ice cream she should get. On the other side of the ice cream stand stood 3 people, who were all wearing the usual uniform of an ice cream salesperson. They appeared to be getting more and more impatient and agitated by the minute. "Excuse me," started Jessie. Jessie was a woman who looked to be in her early 20s and had purple hair. "Have you decided what you would like just yet?" asked James in a tone that one could discern to be hopeful. James was also someone who looked to be in his early 20s and had blue hair. "Well, every single one of them looks great," replied Cynthia as she looked at the large selection of ice cream flavors that were being offered. She really did not know which one to go with. No matter how many times she ran the options through her head, she could not seem to come to a final decision. "Then try them all and knock yourself out," said a Meowth, which surprisingly could talk. This Meowth was a small, feline Pokémon with cream-colored fur that turned brown at the tips of its hind paws and tail. Its ovoid head featured 4 prominent whiskers, wide eyes with slit pupils, 2 pointed teeth in the upper jaw, and a gold oval coin embedded in its forehead. Its ears were black with brown interiors, and were flanked with an additional pair of long whiskers. This Meowth may have appeared to be calm on the outside like its 2 human accomplices. On the though was a completely different story, as this Meowth was thinking along the lines of something like this. "Oh, come on already. What is wrong with this woman? It has been 2 freaking hours and she still can't decide. Somebody save me before I go crazy. I knew humans were weird, but this is just nuts," thought the Meowth, inwardly praying for Cynthia to make up her mind. "I would love to try them all, but then where would I put all the ice cream?" replied Cynthia, which caused Jessie, James and Meowth to sweat drop at her reply. Suddenly there was the noise of angels singing, telling Jessie, James and Meowth that something good was about to happen. "I know! I will take a triple cone with chocolate, mint, strawberries, cookies and cream," exclaimed Cynthia with a small amount of delight, having finally made her choice. And with that she was off again, on her way to the Amity Square, having collected her beloved ice cream. It seemed that Meowth's prayers had been answered after all. As Cynthia was walking away from the ice cream stand, one thought was on the minds of Jessie, James and Meowth. Finally! Good riddance! Don't come back! Those were the thoughts that were shared by the trio of Team Rocket grunts. At the Amity Square, Cynthia was currently inspecting a stone tablet, which had pictures of the legendary Dialga and Palkia on it, while licking her ice cream cone. She was being watched intently by several trainers and passerby whom had also gathered there, mainly due to her. This was the scene that Ash, Dawn, and Brock walked in on. "So that's her. Cynthia the champion," said Ash as he took a close look at Cynthia. "She is even more ravishing live than on TV. I should be in her arms instead of some stupid ice cream," said Brock, acting like a Growlithe or Arcanine in heat, as some drool began to escape his mouth. "Sometimes I worry for you, Brock," replied Dawn as she let out a sigh at her friend's antics. Would Brock ever change? Just then an unknown man walked past them. He had blue eyes and blonde, spiky hair. He also had 3 whisker marks on each one of his cheeks. He had cropped his hair short, and was wearing simple black elastic headband. He was wearing a black uniform-style jacket with an orange zipper that featured several buttons on the waist and sleeves, allowing him to fold up the left sleeve and rear coattails. He was also wearing a red armband with the crest of the renowned Uzumaki clan sewn onto it on his left arm and also had another one on his right arm. "Are you Cynthia?" asked the man. "Yes, I am. Who wants to know?" said a now slightly curious Cynthia as she turned around to face this man. "My name is Naruto Namikaze and I would like to challenge you to a battle," he replied in a firm tone, showing that he was dead serious. This shocked most of the members of the crowd of people nearby and angered one boy with purple hair who went by the name of Paul. Paul was not having a good day. He was planning on challenging the Sinnoh champion himself, and thus he had rushed over here only to see someone else challenge her before him. Yes, Paul was not happy. "It has been a while since I have taken a field challenge," mused Cynthia to herself. "Are you competing in the Sinnoh League this year?" "Yes, that's right. I am," he replied. "I see, fine, then I accept your challenge," said Cynthia with a bright smile. She had decided to humor this person and let him have a go at her. It would also give her chance to enjoy a non-competitive battle, something that she hadn't done in some time. With the spectators. The champion is going to battle him. Unbelievable. She couldn't decide what ice cream to have, spoke Jessie, who had come here with James and Meowth, seeing that there was a big crowd gathered. But she didn't think twice about challenging this new twerp, added James. "I guess champions must be weird like that," concluded Meowth. Meowth still wasn't too joyful about the fact that Cynthia had wasted half of its day by making it wait because she did not know what ice cream to have. With Cynthia and Naruto. "Do you mind if we battle with just one Pokemon each? A full battle will take quite some time. Against someone like you, even this could prove to be quite taxing," said Naruto. Author note: I am not in the mood to write a large battle right now. Maybe in later chapters. "No problem," replied Cynthia in a cheery manner. She was completely fine with this. "Now then, let's get this battle underway. Garchomp, battle dance," said Cynthia as she let out her prized Garchomp. With the spectators. "Wow! There is Garchomp again," said Ash as he scanned the Sinnoh champion's Pokemon with his Pokédex. Garchomp, the dragon and ground pseudo-legendary Pokemon. When it folds up its wings, it can fly like a jet plane at the speed of sound, said the mechanical voice of Ash's Pokédex. With Naruto and Cynthia. "Dragonite, I am in need of your assistance," said Naruto as he let out his Dragonite. Dragonite was a draconic, bipedal Pokemon with light orange skin. It had large, grayish-green eyes and a round snout with small nostrils. A pair of long, thin antennae sprouted from the top of its head, with a small horn set in between them. Its striated underbelly was cream-colored, and extended from its neck to the tip of its long, tapering tail. It had thick arms and legs ending in 3 claws each. Its leg joints were well defined, while its arms had a smooth, rounded appearance. Dragonite's wings were small relative to its body, with teal wing membranes. A Dragonite, huh? Yes, a strong Pokemon indeed. Dragonite against Garchomp will make for a fine matchup. Naruto, you may have the first move, spoke Cynthia as she kindly allowed Naruto to kick things off. Thanks. Dragonite, start off with Dragon Dance. Cynthia narrowed her eyes slightly. She had offered this trainer the first strike and this is what he had chosen to do. Granted, Dragon Dance did boost the user's speed and attack, but then this was still not something she expected. Cynthia opted to wait and see what this guy planned to do next. Now use Hone Claws. Cynthia was now getting tired of waiting. If this guy did not want to make the first move, then she would. Use Flamethrower Garchomp. Garchomp released an orange stream of fire at the Naruto's Dragonite from its mouth. However, Naruto did not seem bothered by this. He calmly called out his next command. Use Protect. A blue force field surrounded Dragonite's body, protecting it from the flamethrower. Garchomp used Dragon Rush. Garchomp flew into the air, and then aimed at Naruto's Dragonite as the two appendages on Garchomp's head began to glow light blue. Then, its body became enveloped in a light blue aura with the same color streaks as it prepared to slam into Naruto's Dragonite with full force. With the spectators. Why is Dragonite just standing there? Asked Ash. It did not make any sense to him. Shouldn't that Dragonite at least try to dodge or get out of the way? Dragon Rush is a move that focuses the user's body into a weapon that strikes with incredible power. Any opponent loses its ability to escape from it, explained Brock. This caused Ash's face to light up in understanding. That guy's Dragonite is in trouble now, thought Paul as he looked on from his spot in the crowd, wanting to see how this guy would respond. With Naruto and Cynthia. As Garchomp approached, Naruto simply smirked. Time for strike one, thought the blonde-haired former shinobi. Who needs to dodge? Not me. Dragonite, stand your ground and prepare to stop the Dragon Rush, said Naruto without even the slightest hint of worry in his voice. Dragonite took up a stance before catching the quickly approaching Garchomp with its two arms. Dragonite then went skidding backwards for a few seconds before coming to a stop, showing that it had succeeded. With the spectators. I don't believe it! He managed to block the Dragon Rush, gasped Dawn. She had not expected something like this at all. That Dragonite is clearly very strong, stated Brock. That was probably an understatement, a huge one at that. With Naruto and Cynthia. Naruto had that Garchomp right where he wanted it. Now it was time to strike. Dragonite used Toxic. Dragonite released a stream of thick purple liquid from its mouth at Garchomp. Upon making contact, the liquid poisoned the dragon and ground-type Pokémon. Cynthia winced seeing this. Toxic was not your everyday giant killing attack, but it was still deadly and lethal nonetheless. Unlike other poison moves, the effects of Toxic would continue to increase with time. This meant one thing. She had to end this battle. Quickly. At the same time, she also had to be careful. This trainer was not one to be underestimated. He had proved that by the way he was battling so far. He had done his homework, and not come unprepared. Cynthia was about to call out her next move, but he called his first. Use Hurricane. Dragonite's wings began to glow light blue and it flapped them, releasing a powerful gust of wind that hit Garchomp and flew up into the sky. When Garchomp came out of the attack, it did not look completely normal. It took Cynthia a few moments to figure out what had happened, and when she did not like it one bit. With the spectators. Something is off. Why does Garchomp look like that? Asked Ash. He did not know how to say it, but that Garchomp looked like it had just come out from a giant vacuum. Yeah, it almost looks dizzy, added Dawn. I think I know what happened. Many people know that Hurricane is a damage-dealing flying type move. What most people do not know is that this move also has another purpose. It has a chance of confusing the opponent should the attack manage to hit, lectured Brock, shedding some new light on this matter. So in other words, this guy fights using moves that have multiple uses. He is not your average run-off-the-mill trainer, that is for sure, thought Paul as he watched the battle taking place with a cold and calculating gaze. Paul couldn't help but feel a tiny little pang of jealousy as he was watching Naruto battle. Part of that was due to the simple fact that Paul knew that he was not on the same level as the two trainers that were engaged in battle right now. That did not mean that Paul was going to admit it, not if he could help it at least. His pride would not allow it. With Naruto and Cynthia. Today is not my lucky day. First this guy hits us with a toxic attack, and then he follows it up by using a move like Hurricane that ends up confusing Garchomp. I might actually end up losing this battle if he plays all of his cards right, thought Cynthia, who was starting to get a little worried about the direction this battle was heading in. Come on, Garchomp, snap out of it, and use Rock Slide. The plea fell to deaf ears as Garchomp was too confused to carry out the order. Seeing this as a chance to get in a few more hits and deal some extra damage, Naruto called out his next move. Dragonite, use Hurricane once more. Then follow it up with Fire Blast. Dragonite's wings began to glow light blue again, and like the last time it flapped them, releasing a powerful gust of wind that hit Garchomp flat on and flew up into the sky. Dragonite then took to sky after Garchomp. Once Dragonite was in front of Garchomp, it caught onto the dragon and ground Pokemon before taking in a deep breath and releasing a powerful font face equals Nimbus Mono L, Monospace Span Lang equals ZHCN /span / font shaped blast of orange fire from its mouth that said Garchomp. With the spectators. I don't think I have ever seen a fire blast done from that close range before, said Brock. This was something new to him. This guy's last combo was pretty good as well. He used the wind from the hurricane attack and used it to amplify the power of his fire blast. If he took part in a contest, I think he would do well, added Dawn. I want to battle this guy, chirped an enthusiastic Ash. This caused Brock to grin at him, knowing that Ash would always be Ash. Even now, he was still eager to battle strong opponents. Considering the type of person Ash was, he would probably pester this Naruto until he agreed to battle him. With Naruto and Cynthia. Garchomp, try and use Dragon Rage, called out Cynthia. Fortunately for the Sinnoh champion, by this time Garchomp had snapped out of its confusion, and so Naruto's Dragonite was not expecting it when Garchomp opened its mouth and fired a red-orange fireball from said mouth at it, allowing it to hit the dragon and flying type straight in the face. Seeing that she now had an opening to work with, Cynthia decided to make the most of it. Garchomp, follow it up with Dragon Rush. As Garchomp was flying halfway to Naruto's Dragonite, which was still slightly disoriented from the Dragon Rage to the face earlier, Naruto called out his counter. You used Dragon Rush as well. Almost instantly Dragonite's body became surrounded in a light blue orb with white streaks. Its horn glowed blue and released a dragon-shaped energy that covered its body. It then, like Cynthia's Garchomp, prepared to slam into its opponent with full force. As the two Dragon Rushes met in midair, a small explosion rocked the surrounding area, and the nearby spectators had to shield their eyes to prevent all the dust that had accumulated from getting into it. With the spectators. So strong, muttered Dawn in awe when she saw the two dragons that had just clashed with each other. Those two dragons are crazy, exclaimed Ash, completely excited, seeing the best battle he ever saw for some time. After all, it was not every day that you could see a champion-class battle up live. You can still feel the shockwave from their clash. This is insane, added Brock. He couldn't help but shake his head in disbelief. Just what kind of training did these two put their Pokemon through in the first place to get to this level? Pondered Brock in his mind. Wow, these two make the twerps seem weak, said Jesse, a little scared. No kidding, confirmed James while wiping away a bead of cold sweat from his forehead, which had appeared since the battle had started. The tension in the air was really thick after all. In fact, it was so thick that you could cut it with an air slash. If those two Pokemon hit me with something like that, then I would be squashed flat faster than you can say Team Rocket, said Meowth, adding his 2 cents, a bit shaken from the thought. With Naruto and Cynthia. As the smoke from the collisions slowly began to clear, Cynthia could see that her opponent's Dragonite was slowly falling towards the ground. Cynthia managed to deduce that her Garchomp had come out on top in that clash of moves, and now Naruto's Dragonite was now wide open. Not wanting to waste the opportunity and look a gift horse in the mouth, Cynthia decided to pounce while the iron was still hot. Now Garchomp used Stone Edge. Cynthia's Garchomp, who was still floating in the sky, crouched its body, and 2 rings of glowing light blue rocks appeared and spun around its body. Then, multiple gray rocks were released from the rings at Dragonite. The attack was a direct hit, and it inflicted tons of damage. It also sent Naruto's Dragonite plummeting to the ground at an even faster speed. However, unlike many others expected him to be, Naruto Namikaze was far from worried. In fact, he still had a calm look plastered on his face as he stared at the falling form of his Dragonite. The next words that he said, no one in the surrounding area could comprehend. Dragonite, prepare formation-y, was the simple command given out by Naruto Namikaze. Cynthia, although not sure of what her opponent was planning, was on high alert. She knew better than to underestimate someone of his caliber, especially after all the stuff he had pulled off today already. So imagine her surprise when the Dragonite made no attempt whatsoever to move and simply crash-landed onto the ground below. Seeing this, she let her guard down. It was a huge mistake. Naruto was smirking yet again. "Niji team, this move is dedicated to you," thought Naruto as the image of a certain deceased Hyuga who kept blabbering about fate when he was younger came to his mind. Cynthia's guard was down, so naturally she and her Garchomp, which had now landed on the ground, were not expecting it when Naruto's Dragonite emerged from underground with its tail stuck out and a small water stream spiraling around said tail. Dragonite proceeded to whip around, slamming its tail into the unsuspecting Garchomp. "Aqua Tail success," said Naruto with a fist pump. Cynthia, who was caught off guard by this, looked over to the spot where Dragonite had supposedly landed to see that it really was not there anymore. "But how? What happened just now?" thought Cynthia as she tried to think of what Naruto could have possibly done. "Are you surprised? Well then, kindly allow me to enlighten you. When my Dragonite landed earlier, there was a minor dust cloud which was kicked up due to the impact of my Dragonite's crash. I anticipated something like this to happen, due to the height and speed of which my Dragonite was falling from. So I told my Dragonite to set up a combo which we have practiced several times before. As soon as your vision was obscured by the dust cloud, my Dragonite moved underground using Dig and quickly prepared to hit your Garchomp with an Aqua Tail when you would least expect it," explained Naruto as if what he had done was a normal thing. Naturally, when Cynthia heard this, she was gaping like a fish out of water due to her slip-up. "I was careless when let my guard down. He took full advantage of it. I cannot let something like that happen again. It could cost me the match. Garchomp has already taken enough damage from the toxic. A clean hit or two more like that and the two of us are in big trouble," thought Cynthia. "See, Niji team. Just like what I did to you at the Chunin exams in Konoha all those years ago. I hope you are watching wherever you are out there," thought Naruto as he remembered one of his most memorable fights during his younger days. It was when he won this match that he had proven many others wrong and showed them that he was not a failure. With the spectators. "That was just I don't know what to say," stammered Ash, at a loss for words. "That was incredible," muttered Paul in a low voice as he clenched his fists in jealousy. Of course, Ash heard his voice and turned in the direction where he heard it. "Hey Paul, when did you get here?" asked a curious Ash. When Brock and Dawn heard this, they also turned around and were now facing Paul as well. "I was here the whole time. It is just that you people were too ignorant to notice me in the first place," mocked Paul. "Jerk," thought Ash, Dawn and Brock at the same time. With Naruto and Cynthia. "I have to tread very cautiously from now on in this fight. I can't afford any more mistakes or it will come back to bite me in the butt. Now what to do? Do I wait for him to make the next move or do I make it myself? The clock is ticking. What to do? What to do?" pondered Cynthia in thought. "Garchomp, use flamethrower," called out Cynthia. "Okay, now hopefully this gives me an opening when he reacts." "Use Sandstorm and send the flamethrower back where it came from," replied Naruto in a calm tone of voice. Dragonite began to wave its arms and created a sand tornado that it launched at the flamethrower before sending it back in the direction of Garchomp. As Cynthia saw the approaching flamethrower-enhanced sandstorm, she knew it was now a crucial time in the match. "It is all or nothing now. Please let this work," pleaded Cynthia internally. "Garchomp, use Giga Impact." As many members of the crowd had seen during the television broadcast earlier that day, Garchomp's body became surrounded by spiraling orange streaks. Then, a purple energy sphere surrounded Garchomp's body and it flew at Dragonite, speeding through the sandstorm like it was nothing, and heading towards its target. Seeing the incoming Garchomp, which looked like a purple missile, Naruto knew that there was not enough time to dodge, and thus he realized that he had to do something to lessen the damage so his Dragonite could make it through this. Dragonite use Protect. With the defense set, Naruto waited with bated breath to see if it would be enough. As Garchomp's body made contact with the Protect barrier, the barrier shattered and Dragonite was sent flying backwards before landing on the hard floor. With the spectators. What just happened? Cynthia's Garchomp just breezed through the barrier and the sandstorm like they were nothing. It is simply phenomenal, gasped Dawn. This battle just kept surprising her time and time again. "What can you say? She is the champion," muttered an astonished Ash who was struggling to find his voice right now. Most of the spectators were so taken back by what just happened that they did not notice the smug look on Naruto's face that practically yelled, "I have won." With Naruto and Cynthia. "That did it. It's over. His Dragonite is finished," thought Cynthia in triumph. Unfortunately for the Sinnoh champion, that feeling was replaced with the feeling of shock when Dragonite slowly began to get up. "But how?" stammered a stunned Cynthia. She was not alone in this aspect. A majority of the crowd were having similar thoughts. The Protect may not have been strong enough, but it did manage to reduce the damage that the Giga Impact would have caused, so in the end it served its purpose, thought Naruto as he gave himself a pat on the back for his quick thinking. Cynthia was snapped out of her state of shock as Naruto spoke up. "I am afraid that it is time to end this. This battle has dragged on for long enough, I feel. Dragonite, use horn drill and wrap this up," said Naruto. Dragonite's horn began rotating like a drill as it flew towards Garchomp at high speeds. As soon as the attack made contact, Garchomp was down and knocked out. Giga Impact is a strong move. However, along with being one of Garchomp's strengths, it is also one of its greatest weaknesses, as it leaves Garchomp defenseless against attacks for a short period of time after the Giga Impact has been launched. So if your opponent has a Pokemon with a one-hit KO move, then it is all over, explained Naruto, a giant smirk on his face. Complete silence reigned over the area for the next few minutes. It was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. The deafening silence was soon replaced by the loud cheers of the surrounding spectators. With the spectators, "I see, but I don't believe it. He did it. He took down the champion's prized Garchomp," said one spectator. "It is inconceivable. He is on another level compared to us. He rocks," said another spectator. Both spectators blinked their eyes several times to make sure that their organs of sight were not playing tricks on them. With Naruto and Cynthia. Cynthia looked down at the spot where her Garchomp had fallen just moments ago. "He beat me. He beat me fair and square. When my friends hear about this, they are never going to let me live this down ever," thought Cynthia as she saw her opponent approaching her. When he was 2 feet away from her, Naruto extended his hand for her to shake, which she took, of course. "That was a truly great battle, Cynthia. You are as strong as you are beautiful. I really enjoyed myself out there today. I hope that we can battle again in the distant future," said Naruto with a warm smile on his face. If people were to take a closer look, they would be able to spot a faint blush on Cynthia's cheeks. "What I am doing? Why on earth am I blushing?" thought Cynthia as she quickly fought down her blush and gave her opponent, Naruto, the same warm smile that he gave her. When Naruto saw her smile, he felt a sense of warmth in the pit of his stomach. He didn't know why, but he felt entranced by that smile. "I would love to do battle with you again as well, Naruto. You are a truly fine opponent," replied a now much happier Cynthia. After shaking hands with Cynthia, Naruto walked over to where Cynthia's Garchomp was now standing at, even if it was a bit shakily, before taking out a small see-through plastic bag from one of his pants pockets. Naruto opened up the plastic and took out a berry. He then extended his left hand, which he was using to hold the berry, towards Garchomp's mouth in a gesture for the dragon and ground-type Pokemon to take the offering. "I am sorry for having my Dragonite poison you earlier. Here, take this. It is a Pecha berry. It will cure the discomfort and pain that was caused by the poison," said Naruto in a kind voice. He did not enjoy making Pokemon suffer. Not at all. It was the opposite, actually. He completely opposed it. Garchomp looked unsure on whether it was safe to take the berry or not, as it was not used to accepting things from people other than Cynthia. So it looked back to its trainer for confirmation. After receiving a small nod from the Sinnoh champion, who had seen the berry in Naruto's hand and knew what it was, Garchomp took the berry with one of its arms before devouring the whole berry in one bite. Garchomp was fondly surprised when it found that the berry was sweet and rather delicious too. As a show of thanks, the Garchomp let out an approving guard, thus letting the trainer know somewhat of how it felt. Before any other events could take place, all the people who were gathered at the Amity Square quickly turned their heads upwards as they saw a huge shadow form on the ground, which indicated that there must be something large flying in the skies above. Upon looking, most people were unable to identify the giant flying object that was shaped like a pyramid, but a certain few were. One such individual, who decided to voice his excitement, was Ash Ketchum. "Hey Brock, look, it is the battle pyramid!" exclaimed Ash as he pointed a finger at Airborne, the battle facility which was headed in the direction of the east. Brock did not get to reply though, as Paul decided to rudely cut in. "Wait a minute here. How would someone like you know about it?" inquired Paul. Paul knew exactly what the battle pyramid was. His brother Reggie had failed to beat it after all. This facility's frontier symbol was the only one that Reggie did not have in his collection. "Oh, that is simple really. I challenged it before. Sure, it took me 3 tries, but in the end I managed to beat it," said Ash in a nonchalant manner. "What? You beat it? Please, the chances of someone like you beating the battle pyramid is extremely slim, if not near non-existent," stated Paul. Paul was someone who was not going to believe just anything anyone said to him. His gigantic ego would not allow him to accept that someone who he had deemed unworthy was able to accomplish such a task. "But I did beat the battle pyramid. I did. I did. I did," retorted Ash. Most of the people who had heard this conversation, instead of being impressed, had large sweat drops due to Ash's childish antics. What a way to make a first impression, Ash. A few minutes later, Naruto's Poke Nav's match call feature activated and his Poke Nav began to ring. Naruto saw that it was a call from Brandon and decided to pick it up. "Hello, Brandon. It is good to see you again." "The same to you. I have arrived at our predetermined meeting point for today. After I land the battle pyramid at a safe location, I, as well as someone that is accompanying me, will meet up with you at the nearest Pokemon Center." "Alright, Brandon, sounds good. I will see you there," said Naruto as he ended the call and placed the Poke Nav back in one of his pockets. He was about to head to the Pokemon Center, both to heal his Dragonite and to meet Brandon, but he didn't get very far, 2 steps, before he came face to face with one black-haired Pokemon trainer from Pallet Town. "You know Brandon?" asked the curious Ash. Naruto simply raised an eyebrow at the question. "Excuse me, but do I know you?" asked Naruto in response. Ash had the decency to look sheepish and scratched the back of his head at this. "Oh, I am sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. I am Ash Ketchum and I am going to be the world's greatest Pokemon master," proclaimed Ash in a way that brought back some old memories of Naruto's. "This guy here reminds me of myself when I was 12 years old, running around in my bright orange jumpsuit and shouting to all the people of the village hidden in the leaves about how I was going to be the greatest Hokage the village had ever known," thought Naruto as he looked at the young Ash, who looked like he was ready to start bouncing up and down any moment now. "Okay, well, it is nice to meet you, Ash. To answer your earlier question, yes, I do know Pyramid King Brandon. He is actually one of my close friends, but if you don't mind, I really do have to get going now," said Naruto. "Whoops. My bad," replied Ash as he realized he was blocking Naruto's path and quickly moved out of the way before walking behind and following after Naruto along with his friends Brock and Dawn, his rival Paul, as well as the champion of Sinnoh, Cynthia, who also had to get her Garchomp healed. At the Pokemon Center. After entering the Pokemon Center, Naruto headed over to the counter where Nurse Joy was seated before handing his injured and fatigued Dragonite over into the nurse's care. Naruto then wandered around the Pokemon Center for about 5 minutes or so before he was able to spot Brandon, who Naruto was mildly surprised to find out was currently with the owner of Kanto Battle Frontier, Scott. The two of them were both wearing their usual attires. Author note: think of the outfits that Brandon and Scott wear during the Advanced Battle series and the Battle Frontier series. "Well, Scott, this is a pleasant surprise. I wasn't expecting you to be with Brandon. Not that I am not happy to see you though," said Naruto, the last sentence being said to avoid any misunderstanding or confusion. "Well, Naruto, it is nice to see you as well. What do you say we all head over to the Pokemon Center's cafeteria? We can begin our discussion there," suggested Scott. It was always nice to talk and grab a bite to eat at the same time. "Sure, that sounds like a fine idea to me. What do you say, Brandon?" asked Naruto as he glanced over at the head of the battle pyramid. Brandon's only response was a simple HN. "Does that response remind you of anyone?" which Naruto and Scott did not mind at all and instead took off for the cafeteria. At the cafeteria, Naruto, Brandon and Scott were seated at a rectangular-shaped table that was light green in color. Each one of them had a plate of food with them but had opted not to eat just yet, choosing to focus on what they were talking about first as they had decided that their food could wait for a while. It was not going to get up and run away after all. Nope, no chance of something like that happening. At least unless it was affected by some radioactive wave that caused it to mutate, or if it magically learned how to grow a set of legs. So Brandon, were you able to learn anything new about the lustrous orb or the writings on the tablet that was found alongside of it? Asked Naruto, getting right down to business. I have had no such luck, I am afraid. I have not come across anything like this before, so I am able to understand why you were having difficulties in deciphering what was engraved on the tablet. This was all Brandon managed to say before he heard a feminine voice ask him and his friends a question. Excuse me? Do you mind if we join you three? Asked the feminine voice. Naruto turned around to see who had asked the question, only to find out that it was Cynthia, who was also with Ash, Brock, Dawn, and surprisingly Paul. No, not at all. Please take a seat, replied Naruto as he gestured towards one of the empty seats at the table. This is going to be a nuisance. I can feel it already. Cynthia took a seat on the right of Naruto, while Ash took a seat on the left of Naruto. Paul sat next to Ash, Brock sat next to Brandon, and Dawn sat next to Scott. Once everyone was settled down, Cynthia decided to start up the conversation which had been interrupted all but a few moments ago. Well, gentlemen, I was walking by when I couldn't help but overhear your conversation and how you were talking about the lustrous orb. And I was wondering if this lustrous orb is the same one, which the researchers in Celestic Town have been searching the Celestic ruins for several months now, but were unable to locate it. Care to shed some light on this matter? Asked Cynthia, but the three, Naruto, Scott, and Brandon, could tell by the look that she was currently giving them that they were going to spill now. Yep, Naruto's intuition had been spot on. I suppose that there would be no point in hiding anything from you. So I am not going to beat around the bush here. Instead, I am going to get straight to the point, said Naruto as he let out a deep sigh before placing his elbows on the table and resting his chin on the back of both of his wrists. About approximately 3 months ago, I was able to locate the lustrous orb. When I found it, though, it was alongside what I presumed to be an ancient tablet at that time. However, no matter how hard I tried, I was unable to decipher what was written on the tablet, said Naruto as he showed Cynthia a photo of the writings that were on the tablet. The others, Paul, Ash, Dawn, Brock, tried to lean in to get a closer look at the picture. Though the 4 of them had little to no knowledge in this area, they still wanted to sate their curiosity. Who wouldn't, for that matter? I have never seen such a type of writing. What is it? Asked Cynthia in bewilderment, as she was sure that she had not come across a writing of this nature before ever. I am not sure myself. I have spent over 5 years in the area of researching things like ancient tablets and ruins, but have yet to encounter such a special case like this one. I am sure you are able to deduce that due to this, the chances of me understanding this language and writings are very, very slim, and the chances me being able to figure out what they are trying to say are even lower. However, I am not one to give up easily. So I contacted one of my close friends, who I also knew had a vast experience in this field, and paid him a visit. I asked him for his help regarding this about a month ago. That man was none other than the Pyramid King, Brandon. We had decided to meet up today to discuss his progress on the matter, but as you can see, he himself has not been successful, explained Naruto before turning his gaze towards Cynthia to see what her reaction would be. But even so, that still does not explain how you were able to locate the lustrous orb faster than Celestic Town's research team. They have been searching for at least half a year prior to today for the orb, questioned Cynthia as she narrowed her eyes slightly and focused on his facial expressions so as to be able to detect any form of deceit. If this man thought he was going to be able to fool her, then he was wrong, dead wrong. Perhaps the research team would have been able to get their hands on the orb, if it had been in the Celestic ruins in the first place. Now I am not sure if it was moved or not, but when I had found the lustrous orb, it was not at the location which you said it should be at, replied Naruto, unfazed by Cynthia's piercing and intoxicating, not to mention gorgeous, bad Naruto, gaze. What did you want the lustrous orb for anyway? Asked Cynthia. This question was on the minds of several others at the table as well, so it was no surprise when all eyes turned towards Naruto. I merely desired to study the orb to learn more about the legendary Pokemon Palkia. I am sure you already know this, but the lustrous orb is said to be related to Palkia and also has the ability to increase said Pokemon's powers. I have no ill intentions if that is what you are thinking. replied Naruto in an emotionless voice quite similar to that of one Itachi Uchiha, which caught the others off guard for a brief second. Just a brief second. They went back to normal after that. The main reason I took it, though, is because if I didn't, then Team Galactic, who I know for a fact have been eyeing the orb for some time now, would have jumped at the opportunity to get their hands on it. That is something that I cannot allow to occur. Although, I am not sure what those twits, Team Galactic, are planning just yet, I cannot let their plan succeed no matter the cost. Or the results will not be pretty. Oh yes, you can bet on that. It won't be pretty at all, thought Naruto darkly, as he knew that such people had to be dealt with at the earliest time possible. They were good-for-nothing troublemakers. These people who called themselves Team Galactic just rubbed Naruto in the wrong. He felt like they were somewhat like that bastard Obito, when he had lost his way course. Then I guess there is nothing that can be done. Naruto Namikaze, I on behalf of the Celestic Town research team and my grandmother, Professor Carolina, am humbly requesting you to enter a negotiation with us for what you will want in exchange for the lustrous orb. If it is money that you desire, then we will pay you whatever sum of cash you request in exchange for the lustrous orb. This orb is very vital for the research we are conducting, and thus are willing to pay you a hefty sum of it, said Cynthia, being completely frank. There was no reason to sugarcoat or candy-coat subjects like this. It was pointless. All the occupants of the table went silent for a moment. Whatever they were expecting Cynthia to say, it was not this. The silence in the cafeteria was so great that if it occurred in a forest instead, you could hear the sound crickets chirping without any difficulty at all. Their reverie was broken by the chuckling of the person that the statement was directed at. Naruto let out a few soft chuckles before cocking his head back and placing his arms behind his head. Cynthia, do you honestly think so lowly of me? You wound me, exclaimed Naruto as he clutched his chest in mock hurt. I am not someone who craves after wealth. If I was such a person, then I could have sold the lustrous orb to tons of people who would pay millions for it in the black market. Though, it has become increasingly evident to me that the lustrous orb really means a great deal to you as well as several others in Celestic Town. In that case, my reply to you is simple. Take it. I will not charge you a single cent. I have no need of the money that you offer. Nor am I trying to insult you by doing something like this. But if giving you the lustrous orb makes you happy, then by all means it is yours from today, continued Naruto as if it was no big deal at all. Brandon, you did bring the lustrous orb along with you when you flew here in the battle pyramid, did you not? Asked Naruto. Yes, I did. I will hand it to you later tonight, replied Brandon. Cynthia was rendered speechless. This man was willing to hand over the lustrous orb to her just like that. But that was not the main reason she was speechless. That was caused by the way this man had phrased his words. Would he simply go that far just to make her happy? The mere thought of something like that happening made her insides all funny and gave her a funny feeling as well. What was this feeling? She had no idea. She had never felt like this before. Cynthia decided that maybe she should befriend this man. He certainly seemed serious about his statement earlier. There were no traces of lies in his statement as well, which added to her belief that he was 100% truthful about what he had just said. She felt that he would make a good friend to her, and she was certain that there was one way or two that she could help him out in the future. Being a champion had its perks after all. Well, now that matter has been settled, how about we discuss something a little less serious, suggested Scott, trying to lighten the mood. Naruto, I would like to ask you a question if you do not mind, spoke Brock. Well, technically you just did. But go ahead, I will let you ask another, replied Naruto as he waved a hand in the air. During your battle with Cynthia earlier, your Dragonite used Dig, which I am sure that its species is incapable of learning. So how did it use Dig exactly? Asked Brock. Brock was one of the few people who had noticed this. He did not point that out in the heat of the battle but had chosen to confront Naruto about it himself, which he was doing right now. Earth Release. Hiding like a mole technique is awesome, that is how. I am really lucky that I borrowed Kakashi-sensei's scroll, which had all the 1000 techniques that he had copied in his lifetime. And the best part is I only made a copy so he never noticed, but I can't tell them that now, can I? What should I say instead? Thought Naruto as he contemplated all the options he had on the table. I am awesome, that's why, declared Naruto, getting face faults from all the members of the audience, except Cynthia and Brandon, whose sweat dropped. Even Paul, upon hearing this, face faulted. Chuckling, Naruto continued, "The technique my Dragon Knight used was not dig, well, not entirely at least. It was a bastardized version of dig. You see, I am the type of person who does not wait for things to happen. I am a person who makes things happen. Using some skills that I had learned in the past, I was able to teach Dragon Knight how to move underground safely. Sure, it took us 6 weeks of effort, and not all of my Pokemon can use the bastardized version of dig, but it is still an accomplishment in my book," informed Naruto proudly as he puffed out his chest. When Naruto had finished his explanation, everyone's jaws, except for Brandon's and Scott's, who already knew the blonde well enough to expect him to do something like this, had dropped. What is this guy? What he has just done is not short of the word magnificent. Could he be this gifted? Thought Cynthia and Paul at the same time. Ash just seemed to become more eager to challenge this guy, and Dawn, well, she currently was looking at Naruto with stars in her eyes. Dawn's actions greatly irked Cynthia, but the Sinnoh champion could not figure out why. "Hey Scott, how exactly do you and Brandon know Naruto?" asked Ash. The interests of all the other occupants at the table were piqued by this. "Well, to answer your question, Naruto was traveling around some ruins sometime around 2 years ago when he first met Brandon and challenged him to a battle," said Scott. "What was the result?" It was Paul who asked this question. "I was hammered. It was a full 6-on-6 Pokemon battle. He thrashed me soundly and won the battle 6-2. It was one of the biggest losses in my whole journey as a Pokemon trainer," said Brandon, not ashamed in the slightest, as deep down he knew that there was not much that he could have done that day. Perhaps he could have narrowed Naruto's margin of victory slightly, but there was no way he could have emerged victorious in that tussle. "After the battle, I contacted Scott and told him about this trainer that had easily bested me in battle. Later, we arranged a meeting with him, and soon after, the three of us became good friends. We learned that despite being a strong trainer, Naruto was someone who liked to keep a low profile," continued Brandon. "But then why did he challenge Cynthia?" asked Brock, as for the second that day, all eyes turned towards Naruto. "As I said to Cynthia earlier today, I am taking part in the Sinnoh League this year, so this was a way to make a name for myself before the time of the tournament," replied Naruto truthfully. Lying about something as little as this would serve no purpose. "So you battled Cynthia, did you?" "I am sure it was a great battle," said Scott, as more of a statement than a question. "Well, it is not that big of a surprise when you look at the type of person Naruto is," said Brandon, who knew that what Scott said was more than likely to be true. "The battle was amazing. Naruto used some really good strategies and combos to win. Dawn even thinks that he would make a great coordinator if he tried," praised the cheery Ash. "I bet Naruto here challenged her to a full battle where he used his Latios." Any further words Scott was going to say were stuck in his throat when Naruto quickly stood up and brought his right hand to cover Scott's mouth. Why did Scott have to open his big trap? Groaned Naruto inwardly as he prepared for the onslaught of questions that he was sure were going to come any time now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. "You have a Latios!" Half said, half shouted all the people at the table except Scott and Brandon. Naruto silently cursed Scott once more in his mind. Scott and Brandon were two of the few people who Naruto had trusted enough to disclose information like this to, but he really wished the man, who was probably in his 30s, hadn't just said that. Now he would have to answer the others' questions. Sure, Naruto thought that it was high time he made a name for himself, but he was not so fond of all of his secrets coming out just yet. He needed to have a few aces up his sleeve, for crying out loud. No shinobi would let all of their cards be seen by their opponents. It was a recipe for certain death. Well, not death in this new world, due to its much more peaceful nature compared to the elemental nations, but you get the idea. At least their group was the only one in the cafeteria at the time. This way no one else knew about Naruto's involvement with the lustrous orb or the fact that he had a Latios in his possession. Boom. Fortunately or unfortunately for Naruto, in the next few seconds there was an explosion in the Pokemon Center, and smoke quickly started to spread and filled the building. Hastily making it out of the Pokemon Center, although the group of people, Naruto and the others, did have to endure a coughing fit along the way, their eyes scanned the nearby premise as they searched for the cause of the explosion once they were outside. After a while, they spotted the people who had been the reason for the explosion in the first place. There in their Meowth-shaped hot air balloon were Jesse, James and Meowth. Jessie was wearing a white tank top that had a large R on it, indicating that she was a member of Team Rocket, and a black undershirt. She was also wearing a short white skirt that reached the top of her knees, as well as a pair of black knee socks that went up all the way to the top of her calves. And to top it off, she was sporting a pair of round-shaped green-colored earrings. James, like Jessie, was wearing a white shirt with a large R on it, indicating that he too was a member of the notorious Team Rocket. He was also wearing a pair of black gloves and a black undershirt. His lower body attire consisted of a pair of long white pants and a pair of black boots. And Meowth looked like any other Meowth, as it was not wearing any accessories or anything else that was special or worth mentioning. Upon closer inspection, Naruto was able to spot something he really did not like. Attached to the bottom of the hot air balloon carriage was a cage, but that was not what set Naruto off. What set the blonde off was the fact that inside the cage were Pokémon that these goons had probably poached. His Dragonite and Cynthia's Garchomp were also amongst the group of stolen Pokémon. Cynthia's Garchomp and my Dragonite are probably still quite tired from the earlier battle, thus making them easier to catch, thought Naruto grimly. As fate would have it, things did not get much easier. A random trainer had ordered his Pokémon to attack and had managed to break the wires that were keeping the cage attached to the hot air balloon in an attempt to save all the Pokémon. It was an attempt gone wrong. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose. He felt a major headache coming on as he saw the wires slowly snapping one by one. Once all of them gave way, the cage holding the Pokémon would come crashing down, and if the Pokémon were still inside of the cage at the time it collided with the ground, then the impact would cause them to be injured. Severely injured. And there was no way in hell Naruto would let that happen. He had to come up with a plan to get those innocent Pokémon out of this mess. He had to come up with one fast too. Then it hit Naruto like a ton of bricks. His Latios, that was the answer. He might have to reveal one of his legendary Pokémon, but it was something that had to be done for the well-being of many other Pokémon. Latios, Espeon, I need your assistance, called out Naruto as he let out some of his strongest allies. Latios was a bird-like, dragon and physic Pokémon. It had an aerodynamic body. The lower half of its body was blue with jet-plane wings and fin-like feet. It had a red triangular marking on its chest. It had white and blue arms that could be tucked into its body. The upper half of its body was white. Espeon was a quadruped, mammalian Pokémon with 2 pairs of slender legs and dainty paws. It was covered in fine, lilac fur. Its ears were large, and it had a pair of purple eyes with white pupils. There were tufts of fur near its eyes, and it had a small, red gem embedded in its forehead. It also had a thin, forked tail. So he really does have a Latios after all, thought Cynthia as she laid her eyes on the dragon and psychic-type legendary from Hoenn. Dawn had taken out her Pokédex and scanned Naruto's newly revealed Latios. Latios, the Ian Pokémon. Latios has the ability to make others see an image of what it has seen or imagines in its head. This Pokémon is intelligent and understands human speech very well. By tucking in its wings and forelimbs, it can fly faster than a jet, said the mechanical voice of the Pokédex. It was at this time that the last of the wires had given way and the cage began to descend towards the ground. However, Naruto was not that worried, at least. This was because at least now he had a way to stop this. Alright Latios, Espeon, I want both of you to use Psychic and stop the cage from falling. Latios and Espeon's eyes began to glow light blue, and the cage became outlined in a similar colored light, before it came to a halt in midair. Now bring the cage down slowly and gently, instructed Naruto. Latios and Espeon then slowly brought the cage downwards and placed it in front of where Naruto was currently standing. Phew! That was good thinking on my part if I do say so myself, thought Naruto as he breathed a huge sigh of relief. Now to teach these 3 a lesson, thought Naruto as he looked at the trio, whose emotions were quite easy to read right now. Naruto knew they were angered and seething that their plan had been foiled, but at the same time they were also frightened of what was to come. Latios, use Luster Purge, Espeon, use Hyper Beam. Latios opened its mouth, and white sparkles formed and gathered in front of it, forming together into a pink ball of energy. Latios then fired a massive pink beam from the ball at the trio of Pokémon thieves. At the same time, Espeon gathered energy before shooting out a yellow-orange beam from its mouth at the hot air balloon. These 2 attacks sent Jessie, James and Meowth airborne. Every time we get so close to succeeding, something like this always happens," said Jessie while clenching her fists. "Will you stop stating the obvious already?" pointed out James. This had happened to them many times before after all. "It looks like Team Rocket is blasting off again," exclaimed Jessie, James and Meowth in unison as the three of them continued flying away, their voices becoming less and less audible, until they were nothing but a speck in the sky. The trainers, including Naruto and Cynthia, then all rushed over to check on their Pokémon. Once they were satisfied, the two champion-level trainers returned their Dragonite and Garchomp respectively to their own Pokeballs. Naruto then walked back to where his Latios and Espeon were, along with the rest of the group, but suddenly paused when he was halfway there. "Is there something that you want from me?" said Naruto to no one in particular. He didn't even bother looking behind him. "Yes, I want to know the source of your strength. How are you so strong? You are able to keep a calm head no matter the situation. On top of that, you are able to come up with strategies to combat tough situations in the blink of an eye. Your Pokemon's strength no laughing matter either, as proven by your Dragonite, Latios and Espeon. So how did you do it? How did you gain so much power? Some secret training method perhaps? What is your secret?" asked a certain purple-haired trainer from Veilstone City. Naruto could not help but compare this guy to one Sasuke Uchiha. The two of them sure had shared quite a number of similarities. They both had a brooding-like exterior, they were both cold and calculating, they both desired power above anything else, although Naruto knew Sasuke's craving in that area was much worse than this. Furthermore, the two of them were both in over their heads, filled with arrogance. The two of them seemed to take things for granted and think that there were shortcuts to obtain their goals. If Naruto's observation of this guy based on how he had acted throughout the day was reasonably accurate, then there was a high possibility that this guy had a 30-foot-long pole stuck up his ass. Unbeknownst to the members of the group, Cynthia, Paul, Ash, Dawn and Brock, Naruto was someone who may have seemed to be laid back and calm, but underneath was a person who, due to his past life as a shinobi, knew that it was vital to stay alert and keep your guard up at all times. Sure, the Naruto of old was not much of a calculating and sharp shinobi, but then again, after coming to this new world and reminiscing about the past, he learned that there were many areas of being a ninja which he had not taken seriously that could have made a big difference in some of the major events that took place in his previous life. With that in mind, Naruto Namikaze made it a point to relearn all the boring and uncool stuff that some people and friends had taught him in the past, then use them to his advantage in this world. Naruto did not like to admit it at first, but these tips had proven to be really useful to Naruto time and time again. It had also helped Naruto progress as a trainer much faster. Naruto wished that he could turn back the clock and stop himself from neglecting these dull, but necessary, teachings. So, Naruto would not be too surprised if this purple-haired teenager turned out to have a pair of Sharingan eyes. He sure acted like an Uchiha, that was for sure. "You really are a funny one, you know. Not many people would just simply go and give out their secrets just like that," remarked Naruto, inwardly enjoying the fact that he had riled up the boy in front of him. "How about something like this? Why don't you tell me about what your belief on Pokemon's strength is, and I will tell you mine. That way you can compare the differences between both of our beliefs. As it is, there are not many people out there that have the same belief on Pokemon that I do," stated Naruto offhandedly. "Very well. I believe that a trainer's main concern of his Pokemon should be their strength in battle. I strongly dislike weak Pokemon, and have no qualms about releasing my Pokemon if they do not meet my expectations. To this effect, I always check new captures with my Pokédex to learn what moves they know, and I train all the Pokemon that I do keep harshly to make them strong. In my opinion, bonding with Pokemon would only turn them into slackers. As such, I will not hesitate to scold my Pokemon for losing to opponents that I feel that they could have beaten. After all, to me Pokemon that do not deliver are simply dead weight and a hindrance," said Paul, not fazed at all by how harsh and cruel that he has just sounded. "Yup, this guy is definitely like Sasuke," thought Naruto, the remainder of his doubts put to rest by the way the younger brother of Reggie had just spoken. Naruto turned his head to his left for a moment, as he gained a faraway look in his eyes. At that moment a small breeze of wind brushed against his face and hair. Naruto then closed his eyes for a brief moment before he decided to give his reply to Paul. "Paul, your way of thinking is the exact opposite of my own. Let me tell you of the first lesson that one of my teachers, Kakashi, taught me. Every trainer is educated and is told to follow a set of rules in the Pokemon world. It is also a known fact that a lot of trainers decide to go by the book completely as they believe that is the right way to go. But that is not what my teacher believed in. Oh no, not at all. Do you know what my teacher taught me? He said that, in this world, those who break the rules are trash, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash. From the very day that you capture a Pokemon, that Pokemon becomes your friend and comrade. You are that Pokemon's leader and thus are the one responsible for its well-being. It is your job to guide and protect that Pokemon. When a battle is lost, it is not the Pokemon who are at fault, it is the trainer. When someone has something precious that he/she wants to protect, it is then that person becomes truly strong. A true victory can only be achieved when you obtain it along with your Pokemon, not by yourself. When you support your Pokemon, then they will support you. Through this, a bond of trust is formed. When that bond is formed, every Pokemon will go over the edge and give it a 110% for every battle. Without this bond of trust, many things that I have done with my Pokemon would not have been even remotely possible in the first place. For instance, if my Dragonite did not trust me, then we would have definitely lost the battle to Cynthia's Garchomp. If you remember correctly, there was one point during the battle when Cynthia asked her Garchomp to use Giga Impact. In response, I told my Dragonite to use Protect. Dragonite, who had gone through the strenuous battle and had a grasp of its opponent's strength, undoubtedly already knew that the Protect would not be enough to stop the Giga Impact. However, despite all of that, it still obeyed my command. Do you know why? This is because my Dragonite believed in me and had faith in me. Should Dragonite have hesitated even in the slightest, then defeat would have been certain and unavoidable. A trainer must always treat their Pokemon with love and affection. This will not make a Pokemon a slacker as you believe. On the contrary, this will fuel a Pokemon's drive to repay its trainer for the kindness that he/she has shown it. Take a moment and think here. Pokemon are just like humans. They want to be loved and accepted. A little bit of care and acknowledgement will go a really long way. Believe me, I know this better than anyone. Pokemon do not desire to simply be used for their abilities. How would you feel if you were merely a weapon for others to use and discard whenever you wish? You would feel lonely and empty inside, that's how. Paul, know this and know this well. Until you can become one with your Pokemon and treat them as equals, as your family, then you will never be able to gain the power that you seek. The sooner you understand this, the better it will be for you. Explained Naruto, imparting some of the words of wisdom that Kakashi Hatake and Hakuyuki had passed on to him when he just became a shinobi. Paul took a few minutes to process what he had just been told. This guy seemed to have the same mindset as Ash, not something that Paul agreed with. No matter whose mouth it came from. Then prove to me that your ideals are so much better than mine. Battle me and show me the true extent of your strength. Only then will I give consideration to your words. Spoke Paul with conviction and determination in his voice. Naruto cocked his head to the side as he looked into Paul's eyes. It seemed that his guy was really serious about battling him. Oh, this was going to be fun. Naruto was going to enjoy giving this guy a wake-up call. If this is what it takes, then so be it. If only to show you that your way of thinking is flawed, then I will do battle with you. Name the conditions of the battle, Paul. It will be a full 6-on-6 battle, Pokemon exchanges allowed. The battle will be over when either one of the trainer's Pokemon are all unable to battle. Now then, do you accept my challenge, Naruto? Asked Paul. Indeed I do. Current location, at the Battle Pyramid. Naruto and Paul were currently standing on opposite ends of the battlefield that was located inside of the Battle Pyramid. Brandon's assistant, Samuel, was standing on a slightly raised platform that was beside the middle divider of the battlefield. Author note: think of the place where all the referees usually stand. Samuel had agreed to be the referee for this battle at Brandon's behest. Samuel was a young man who appeared to be in his late teens. He had light brown hair and a pair of bright blue eyes. He was wearing a light brown uniform that looked to be suited for outdoor activities, as well as an ocean blue colored tie. Samuel also had a bandana around his hair in a fashion which reminded Naruto of one Ibiki Marino, the head of the torture and interrogation department of the village hidden in the leaves. Naruto silently pondered if it was possible that this guy was like Ibiki, but he quickly dismissed the thought. This was because Samuel seemed to lack the imposing figure and intimidating aura that Ibiki possessed. But then again, it was highly unlikely for someone to have the need for such traits in this world, unless of course they were a part of the police department. There were also several people who were seated in the stands. Amongst them were Ash, Dawn, Cynthia, Scott, Brandon and Brock. For Brandon this was not something he was accustomed to, as he was normally the one who would take part in the battles that were held in the battle pyramid, not sit down and watch them. There was a first time for everything, right? Some of you out there must be wondering how all of these guys ended up here, right? Well, the answer to that question is as follows. After Paul arrogantly decided to challenge Naruto to a full battle, Scott had brought up the proposition of letting the battle be conducted in the battle pyramid by saying that it was a much better suited battleground. That or Scott probably wanted to save Paul from the humiliation that Scott knew Paul would have had to have endured otherwise. Scott already knew that had Naruto and Paul ended up conducting their battle in the open, there would have been a much larger group of spectators present to witness what Scott knew was sure to come. Paul's loss was inevitable in Scott's eyes. Scott was fairly confident that Naruto was going to end up picking apart Paul's team, probably without much effort to boot. And with that, the group of 8, Ash, Dawn, Brock, Paul, Scott, Brandon, Cynthia and Naruto, made their way over to the battle pyramid. On the battlefield. This will be a 6-on-6 Pokemon battle between Naruto Namikaze and Paul of Veilstone City. Trainers, send out your first Pokemon, said Samuel. Alright Espion, you're up, called out Naruto as he let out the Physic Evolution to engage in battle for the second time in the same day. Chimchar, stand by for battle, said Paul as he let out his Chimchar. Chimchar was a bipedal Pokemon that resembled a chimpanzee. Its fur was primarily a shade of orange, though its face, outer ears, underbelly, hands, and feet were light yellow. Its rear had a small round, red patch that was obscured by flames produced by the burning gas in its stomach. Its ears were large in comparison to its head size and were red inside. It had 2 pointed teeth in its upper jaw. Chimchar had red markings that nearly surrounding all of its eyes, a swirl-like symbol on its chest, and 5 fingers on its hands with 3 toes on its feet. It had a swirly crest of hair on its head. If both trainers are ready, then you may begin, informed Samuel. Alright Paul, let's see what you have got. I can take anything you can throw at me, so you better not hold back or you will regret it, stated Naruto. Chimchar, fire spin go. Chimchar released a spiraling fire from its mouth that formed together into a vortex and fired it at Espion. Had the fire spin hit, Espion would have been trapped in a pillar of fire. But alas, sadly it did not. Counter with Shadow Ball, said Naruto. Espion opened its mouth and created a black and purple ball in front of its mouth, then Espion fired it at the incoming vortex of red flames. The shadow ball easily cut through and overpowered the fire spin before heading straight for Chimchar. Chimchar used Dig to dodge. Chimchar quickly dug a hole underground using both its hands before entering said hole in the nick of time as the shadow ball barely skimmed over its head a second or two later. Espion, get near the hole and use double team. Almost instantaneously Espion sprinted across the field, coming to a stop as it was just a foot's distance or so away from Chimchar's self-dug hole before it created multiple copies of itself. These copies of Espion surrounded the hole from all angles. As Chimchar slowly popped its head out of the hole that it was hiding in, a sense of fear and nervousness slowly started to seep into its mind as it saw the predicament it was now in. Not knowing what to do, Chimchar lunged at one of the Espions, hoping to get lucky and hit the right one. Unfortunately, the Espion faded away, indicating it was just a copy. And now Chimchar was wide open. Espion, Skull Bash, let's go. The real Espion, who was hidden amongst all of its copies, began running at the exposed Chimchar, and its body became surrounded by a white aura. Espion then struck Chimchar with its head. This knocked Chimchar out cold. The floodgates had opened, and it was just the beginning. Chimchar is unable to battle, the winner is Espion, said Samuel. Paul returned Chimchar to its pokeball, a disappointed look clearly visible on his face. He then delivered a few additional words to the fire-type starter from Sinnoh. You should be ashamed, making one of the most basic mistakes like that. Worthless, spat Paul as he looked at the pokeball that Chimchar was now resting in with disdain and disapproval clearly evident in his eyes. This guy still doesn't get it. It is going to be harder than I thought getting him to see the error in his ways, thought Naruto. Weevil, stand by for battle. So now you are going with a dark type, huh? No matter. Type advantage will make no difference against my Espion, said Naruto coolly. It does not matter how strong a psychic Pokemon is, they are still weak against dark types. Dark types are even immune to psychic attacks, retorted Paul. Naruto casually rolled his eyes at the remark, seeming not to care at all. Use Ice Shard, said Paul. Weevil raised its hands and formed a glowing light blue block of ice in between them. It then threw the block of ice at Espion. Espion used quick attack to dodge. Espion ran at a fast speed and managed to avoid the incoming block of ice. While running, Espion left a white trail of energy behind it. Espion used quick attack again to get up close. Again Espion took off, this time heading straight for Paul's Weevil. Rapid fire ice beam, ordered Paul. Weevil opened its mouth, and a light blue ball appeared in front of it. It then fired a blue beam from the ball at Espion several times. Espion though managed to skillfully maneuver its way around all of the ice beams. Now use Signal Beam. A light blue ball of energy formed in front of Espion's head. It then fired a rainbow-colored beam from the ball at Weevil, hitting it dead-on from point-blank range and defeating it as well. Weevil is unable to battle, trainer, send out your next Pokemon, instructed Samuel. In the stands. Boy, I don't think this is going to take very long, said Dawn. Don't count Paul out just yet. I am sure that he still has a trick or two up his sleeve, assured Ash. These two do not know it, but we have yet to see Naruto's going all out, thought Brandon. Like Scott, he knew who the victor would be before the battle had even started. He was broken out of his thoughts when he saw Paul letting out his third Pokemon. On the battlefield, Paul had opted to go with his Magmar for the third round. He knew that he had to try something, anything at all, to try and turn this battle around. Author note: I am not sure when exactly Paul caught his Magmar. I only know that the earliest that he was known to have used it in the anime was against Maylene. So let's just say he already has it at this point in time. Magmar was a bipedal Pokemon with a red body that had yellow flame designs on it. A row of red spikes ran down its back, and there were 2 lumps on its forehead with a flame on top of each one. It had a puckered, yellow beak and small eyes. Its thighs were yellow, and it had red feet with 2 clawed toes each. Its arms were covered in rigid, red scales, and it had red hands with 5 clawed fingers. It had black, metal shackles on its neck and ankles. At the tip of its yellow tail was a flame. Paul knew that as things stood, this match was going downhill and that he had to come up with a plan fast. Magmar used Will-O-Wisp. A blue fireball appeared in between Magmar's hands and it fired it at Espion, which upon making contact, burned it, though Naruto did not seem bothered by this. Espion used Facade. Espion became covered in an orange aura for a moment. It then charged at Magmar at top speed. Magmar used Flamethrower. Magmar's eyes glowed orange. Then, it released a red-orange stream of fire from its mouth, charging Espion. Espion, to its credit, simply took the flamethrower in stride as it charged through the flames, before smashing into Magmar and sending the semi-evolved Pokemon flying backwards. And Magmar was down. Magmar is unable to battle, said Samuel. Always remember to be careful when using a technique, or your opponent could end up using it against you, lectured Naruto as he repeated the words that Kakashi had told him during Team 7's belt test when he was a newly made genin. Alright Paul, who's next? Asked Naruto in a bored tone of voice as he placed a hand over his mouth pretending to stifle a fake yawn. Paul stared at the Espion in front of him. This Pokemon may be quite strong, okay, scratch that, very strong. But now it was burned, and Paul knew he finally had something to work with. It was not much, but at least it was something. Ursaring, stand by for battle, said Paul as he let out his 4th Pokemon. Ursaring was a bipedal, ursine Pokemon. Its broad body was covered in brown fur, except its muzzle, inner ears, and paw pads, which were a light tan. It had narrow eyes, a triangular, black nose, and wide mouth with small, visible fangs in the upper jaw. The fur on Ursaring's shoulders was longer and more structured, with rectangular extensions that resembled epaulets. There was a large, tan, ring-shaped mark on its chest. Ursaring's forelimbs were long, ending in 5 claws each, while its hind legs were short and thick, ending in 3 claws each. Its tail was large and spherical in shape. "Begin the battle," called out Samuel. "Espion, I think it is time we get rid of that nasty burn, don't you?" asked Naruto. The purple feline Pokemon simply gave a curt but small nod. It already knew what move its trainer wanted it to execute next. "Fine then. Use rest," said the spiky blonde-haired trainer. In the stands. "Wait a minute! If he had a move like rest, then why didn't Naruto use it earlier?" asked Dawn. "You see, although rest is a move that heals the user's status problems and restores the user to full health, it also leaves the user vulnerable to attack while it is in a state of slumber," explained Brock. "That is not all though. Naruto's Espion had a move like Facade which Naruto wanted to use to his advantage as much as possible. You see, the power of Facade is doubled if the user is paralyzed, poisoned or burned. So by waiting for a while, he was able to take out Paul's Magmar much easier," added Cynthia, who was really impressed by the way Naruto was able to think several steps ahead of his opponent time and time again. He had already done so several times today. "But that still does not change the fact that Naruto's Espion will be easier to attack now," pointed out Ash. "Oh, I highly doubt it. You see, Naruto would not do something like this without something to back up his Pokemon. He knows that by using rest, an opponent could do the same thing he did to Cynthia earlier today, and use a one-hit KO move on him. So I am extremely sure that Naruto is up to something. He is almost always prepared for these type of scenarios," replied Scott. "What are you planning, Naruto?" thought Brandon. On the battlefield. Ursaring used Slash. Ursaring claws glowed white, and it ran at Espion as it attempted to slash the aforementioned Pokemon. "Espion, it's time to use Sleep Talk." Espion's entire tail glowed white, and it hit the Ursaring's claw with it. The force of the two attacks cancelled each other out. "So Espion used Iron Tail, huh? I guess I will try my luck again by using Sleep Talk for a second time, then see what happens," thought Naruto. "Sleep Talk one more time," ordered Naruto. The top part of Espion's head glowed blue and its head became surrounded by a see-through reflective shield. It then shot forward at Ursaring like a missile, before slamming its head into it. "Ursaring, strike back with Hyper Beam," said Paul. The purple-haired trainer was given a not-so-pleasant surprise when instead of attacking, Ursaring backed away slightly, cowering in fear. "What? Why is Ursaring scared?" asked Paul more to himself than anyone in general. This was caused by the move Espion just used when using Sleep Talk. That move was called Zen Headbutt. Not only is it a powerful move, Zen Headbutt also has a chance of causing the opponent of the user to flinch, thus preventing them from attacking, explained Naruto, causing Paul to grit his teeth in anger. "I just can't seem to get a break here. What on earth am I supposed to do? Not only is this guy strong, he is also extremely lucky. Darn him," thought Paul. As fate would have it, it was at that moment that Espion woke up. Would you look at that? It seems that Espion is now wide awake. And it happened just as your Ursaring has decided to lose its nerve. What impeccable timing, don't you agree, Paul? Now Espion, let's show them what a real Hyper Beam is like," boasted / mocked Naruto. Espion gathered energy before shooting out a yellow-orange beam from its mouth, defeating Paul's fourth Pokemon the very moment the move made contact. Surprisingly, Paul, instead of being angered or frustrated more than he already was, smirked at the development. After returning Ursaring, Paul let out his fifth Pokemon. Torterra, stand by for battle. Torterra was a bulky quadruped Pokemon that resembled a tortoise, with a large shell covering its back. There was a single, oak-like tree and 3 triangular, stony extensions resembling mountain peaks on the top of the shell. There was a patch of brown, which resembled soil, next to the tree. A white rim surrounded the shell, and formed a diamond-shaped continuation on the front. Torterra's body appeared sectioned, with the upper half being green and the lower half being brown. Its mouth was jagged, and at the end of its snout was a dark brown beak, giving it the appearance of a snapping turtle. Its lower jaw was green and there were 2 large spikes protruding from its cheeks. Torterra's small, red eyes were encircled by a black ring. Its legs were thick and they had 4 toes each, which appeared as if they were actually jagged stones. There were 3 toes on the front and 1 on the heel. As the large and bulky grass and ground-type Pokemon landed on the ground, It let out a loud battle cry signifying its intent to engage its opponent in combat. Okay, now is my chance. He just had his Espion use Hyper Beam, so the best course of action would be to strike while it can't move. Schemed Paul in his head, though all of his plans went straight out the window with what Naruto did next. Espion return, said Naruto as the blonde returned the psychic type Eve evolution to its Pokeball. In the stands. That was a good move by Naruto. A Pokemon will have to take a while to recharge after a Hyper Beam has been launched. Knowing this, Naruto decided to call back Espion for another Pokemon to avoid it taking any unnecessary damage. Commented Cynthia. On the battlefield. Idiot! 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 Yelled Paul in his head, as he kept mentally berating himself for not remembering that Naruto could switch out his Pokemon as well. Paul felt like going and smashing his head against the wall right now, and he probably would have done it too if it was not for the fact that there were other people here right now. That and it wouldn't look good for his image. Alright, now let's see what he sends out next, thought Paul as he, as well as all the people watching in the stands, eagerly awaited the identity of Naruto's next Pokemon. Lucario, it's your turn, called out Naruto. Lucario was a bipedal, canine-like Pokemon, with fur that was predominantly blue and black. It possessed a short, round spike on the back of each forepaw, in addition to a third on its chest. It had a long snout and a pair of ears. Besides that, it had 2 pairs of pointed teeth, one in the upper jaw and one in the lower. It possessed cream-colored fur on its torso, and blue fur on its thighs that resembled shorts. It had a medium-length tail of the same blue color as well. It stood on its toes rather than on its feet. It also had 4 small black appendages on its head. Paul, seeing as this has not been much of a battle thus far, I am going to let you have the next move, mocked Naruto as he made a come-at-me gesture with his right hand. Naruto in actuality was goading/baiting Paul. Is he insulting me? Does he think of me to be nothing more than a nuisance? Well, I will show him. No one does something like that and gets away with it, fumed Paul in his mind. Torterra, use Giga Drain on Lucario. The 3 mountains on Torterra's shell glowed green, and matching energy beams extended from their tips. The beams wrapped around Lucario's body, who made no attempt to dodge, draining its energy, before receding back into Torterra's shell after the attack was completed. Now use Frenzy Plant, ordered Paul. Torterra's body became outlined in green and it slammed its front 2 legs into the ground. Giant roots with spikes on them came out of the ground and headed straight for Lucario. Not yet, Lucario, let the roots get just a little closer, said Naruto through the telepathic bond that the two shared. Just as the roots were about to hit Lucario dead on, Naruto called out his next order. Use extreme speed and get into the air, said the blonde-haired trainer. Lucario bent its legs and became surrounded in a white and clear aura, before jumping up into the air at a high speed. Now Lucario, it is time to use that move, said Naruto. Paul looked up towards the ceiling of the battle pyramid only to be met with the sight of Lucario, who was now looming dangerously above Torterra with a giant light blue-colored spiraling sphere of energy in its right paw. To make things even more impressive than they already were, the spiraling sphere was of gigantic proportions, even larger than that of Lucario's own body. The first thought that entered the minds of Paul and everyone watching the fight, minus Scott and Brandon, simply because the two of them had already seen the attack firsthand before, were, what the flying is that thing? When the attack impacted with Torterra, there was a large shockwave unleashed. Once the dust from the shockwave subsided, the spectators were able to see the formation of a massive crater in the middle of the field, where Torterra was standing before being smashed with that last attack. Such ridiculous power! I don't think any of my Pokemon could have taken that blast head on and not be knocked out, not even my Torterra, thought Paul in resignation. His brain had been the first to reboot after witnessing the renowned 4th Hokage's jutsu being incorporated into a Pokemon battle move. Paul turned his gaze towards the newly formed crater, which looked to be at least a good meter or 2, maybe even more in diameter, to see that the now bruised and battered continent Pokemon, which was laying unmoving in said crater, did indeed have swirls in its eyes, indicating that it was in no condition to continue battling. Paul let out a deep sigh of exasperation before returning Torterra to its Pokeball. I forfeit this match. There is no point in continuing this any further. I know that I have lost, admitted Paul, although he did it a tad bit begrudgingly. I guess that's it then. Nice Lucario, great battle, praised Naruto. The Aura Pokemon looked back at its trainer and thanked him for his praise shortly before Naruto returned it to its Pokeball. In the stands, the result was set in stone from the very beginning. Now the real question is, how will Paul react to this one-sided battle? Thought Scott and Brandon. Cynthia, Dawn, Brock and Ash were still very curious about the final attack used by Naruto's Lucario, but decided to save their questions for later. Ash was currently looking back down onto the damaged battlefield with uncertainty in his eyes. On one hand, he felt that this was necessary for Paul to see that his ways were indeed wrong. Ash, like Naruto, hoped that Paul would now change his training methods and outlook on life. On the other hand, though, Ash could not help but gain some new added respect for Paul. The trainer from Pallet Town knew that it would take some real guts to go and challenge someone like Naruto the way Paul did. In Ash's mind, Naruto was not someone to be taken lightly. In fact, that was understatement. Seeing Naruto's Dragonite bring down Cynthia's Garchomp had sparked a new sense of determination in him. It had shown Ash that anything was possible. The son of Delia Ketchum had resolved to make it to the top just like Naruto Namikaze. After finding out that the two of them shared similar beliefs, Ash's confidence in his chances of accomplishing his lifelong dream of becoming a Pokemon master through hard work and bonds with his Pokemon had skyrocketed to unimaginable heights. So it was no big surprise when Ash rushed down onto the battlefield and offered some kind words to Paul in an attempt to cheer his rival up a little bit. "I will tell you, Paul, that was great," chirped Ash as he placed a comforting hand on Paul's right shoulder, which Paul decided to ignore. Instead, Paul just spared a sideways glance at Ash before focusing his gaze on Naruto once more. The ex-shinobi was still standing on the other side of the field and had not moved yet, his face remaining impassive. As their gazes met, the son of Minato Namikaze decided to impart a little advice to Paul. "We will battle again someday. Think back about what happened today, train hard, and when you are ready, come and face me in battle once more," advised Naruto. "I will work on it. Goodbye for now, then," said Paul as he gave a respectful bow and walked off. Scene change, Pokemon Center Treatment Room. Shortly after Paul had walked out of the battle pyramid, he was followed by the others, Scott, Brandon, Ash, Dawn, Brock, Cynthia, and Naruto. It was then that Ash had pointed out that Paul was walking in the direction opposite to where the Pokemon Center was located. Naruto and Cynthia had stopped Paul and reminded him that his injured Pokemon needed to be treated first, to which he accepted. Unfortunately, when they got to the Pokemon Center, Nurse Joy claimed that she needed to perform emergency surgery on an injured Pokemon. Thus, Naruto decided to heal Paul's Pokemon by himself. Cynthia offered her assistance to Naruto in treating Paul's Pokemon, as she also had an above-average knowledge in the medical field. Naruto gratefully accepted her help and thanked her for it. Nurse Joy then showed them to one of the empty treatment rooms before heading off to perform the emergency surgery. While treating Paul's Torterra, Naruto explained that when they are hit with powerful attacks, Pokemon tend to get a fever sometimes, and thus Pokemon need to be treated everywhere. Cynthia also gave Chimchar a pill and some water and then asked it to rest. And this is where we rejoined the group of 8 in the treatment room. Scott and Brandon were standing near one of the 2 windows of the room while Paul was standing near the other window. Ash, Brock, and Dawn were standing together at a corner of the room while watching Naruto and Cynthia finish up treating Paul's Pokemon. "Alright, that just about does it. Paul, we are done treating your Pokemon," said Naruto while wiping off a bead of sweat from his forehead as he and Cynthia, whom were both standing in front of the trio consisting of Ash, Brock, and Dawn, turned to face Paul. "Thank you very much, both of you," replied Paul. "Naruto, now that Paul's Pokemon are healed, there is something that I want to ask you. What was that last move that your Lucario used on Paul's Torterra?" asked Cynthia. The tension in the room suddenly spiked a little as the question was asked. Naruto inwardly face-palmed. He seemed to be making himself the center of attention far too often in the last 24 hours. Thinking about it again, Naruto thought that perhaps he should have just finished the battle with Paul's Torterra using a normal Pokemon move. As a certain heir to the Nara clan would say, all this attention was becoming troublesome. Naruto knew that he could not slip through this one without telling the others about his technique. He would have to come clean again. But if the others were not going to let this slide, that did not mean that Naruto was going to just tell them all the secrets of the Rasengan. He might tell them how the technique worked, but he certainly would not tell them how to learn it, not for now at least. To answer that question, it would be better if I begin from the source of the technique. Tell me, do any of you know what aura is? Asked Naruto. Aura, yeah, I remember now. I and Brock learned about aura when we visited Rhoda sometime last year, exclaimed Ash as a few old memories entered his mind. So the two of you already have a basic understanding of what aura is. Good, that makes things a little easier. But I think it is best that I explain this in detail anyway. In the Pokemon worlds past, there were once humans that could sense aura and control its power. These humans, known as Aura Guardians, traveled around the world doing good deeds and passing on their skills to those who were also in possession of this innate ability. One famous Aura Guardian was Sir Aaron, who took a Lucario as his apprentice and became a hero when he sacrificed himself to stop a war from destroying the area around the Tree of Beginning. There is another story of how a Spiritome was sealed away by an Aura Guardian who traveled with a Pikachu. Lucario is known as the Aura Pokemon, and also possesses the most potential in that field as it is the Pokemon that is the most attuned to aura. Medicham, on the other hand, is a Pokemon that has the capability to read aura. The Aura Guardians completely disappeared from history of time without a trace for some undisclosed reason a long time before the present era. There are very few humans who exist today that are able to utilize the usage of aura. I am one of those people. The only human in the present time known to have the ability to control aura aside from myself is Riley. I recently found out that a boy named Ash Ketchum possessed the same ability, though Ash had chosen to continue his journey as a Pokemon trainer rather than follow up on the revelation. However, I also found out from Riley that Ash did follow in the footsteps of the known Aura Guardians by helping Lucario to save the Tree of Beginning. Explained Naruto. As the last few sentences left Naruto's mouth, all the occupants of the room seemed to continuously look back and forth between Naruto and Ash. The latter had the decency to look a little sheepish while the former simply shrugged it off, unfazed that this new piece of information about himself was now out in the open. The way Naruto saw it, this new revelation actually worked out in his favor. He was really fortunate that chakra and aura were somewhat similar. It was one of the few reasons that enabled him to teach his Lucario how to use the Rasengan. The slight similarities between aura and chakra also gave Naruto a cover-up story sort of anyway. This way, if a situation ever arose in which Naruto ever had to use the Rasengan to get himself or someone else out of trouble, he would have a way to reveal his unique abilities without revealing them completely at the same time. Whichever way you looked at it, it was a win-win situation for Naruto. Naruto cleared his throat to get everyone's attention. He did not want to spend too much time on this topic. It would be for the best if he got this over and done with as soon as possible. He did not want to take the risk of revealing anything unnecessary unless he absolutely had to, and the longer this discussion dragged on, there was a higher possibility of something like that happening. If you are finished staring, I feel it is best we get back to the matter at hand. As I was saying earlier, the Aura Guardians are nearly non-existent in today's day. But that just makes them more sought after. You see, Aura Guardians have certain abilities. These abilities may vary with each Aura user, but I can still name a few of said abilities. Some of the capabilities of past Aura users were that they were able to read minds and actions of another being. Besides that, they could sense other auras and view surroundings even with a blindfold on. They could also see through certain objects. Furthermore, they were able to project their own aura, such as to create barriers or attacks. Moreover, they were able to transfer aura to others, but that method could prove be fatal to the user. Another ability of the aura users was that they were able to use their aura to activate time flowers. There are various Pokemon moves which seem to use aura. Aura Sphere is a move that explicitly uses aura. Aura may also be involved in the moves Dragon Pulse, Dark Pulse, Heal Pulse, and Water Pulse, but this cannot be confirmed yet as there has been no solid evidence to back up this claim. Now moving on. As I said earlier, Lucario is the Pokemon that has the most potential in using aura. In a battle, a trainer has to use every advantage at his disposal if he/she truly desires to become the best. After my Lucario had reached a certain strength level, I decided that it was time to tap into all that hidden potential that Lucario had in the form of its aura. So I set out to create an original move of my own. I wanted to create a move that would be simple and powerful. But at the same I wanted it to be made in such a way so that others could not simply copy it for their own usage. Naruto paused for a moment before continuing. The move that my Lucario used on Paul's Torterra earlier was called the Rasengan. I created it by observing my Lucario's aura sphere, which I learned used a combination of aura and shape transformation to a lesser degree. I spent 3 whole years developing the Rasengan. My intention was to take the shape transformation of one's aura to the highest possible point. The Rasengan is a short-ranged, offensive technique. It relies solely on the aura control of the user. Once it is complete, it becomes self-sustaining, which does not give the Rasengan a definite limit for the number of times that it can be used in battle. The compacted nature and moving speed of the aura allows the Rasengan to grind into whatever it comes in contact with to inflict major damage. This tends to launch the target spiraling backward after being hit, or, if the target is lying on or being launched to the ground, the destructive force is enough to form a crater, as seen when it was used on Paul's Tort era. When I had my Lucario learn this technique, I had the learning process broken up into 3 separate parts. Furthermore, when the Rasengan was first completed, it was only the size of one's palm. But I realized that this would make it hard for Lucario to hit an opponent with the Rasengan in battle without the opponent dodging it or countering it with another move. So Lucario had to work even harder to increase the size of the technique. After about another month, Lucario managed to double the size of the Rasengan, which I called the Big Ball Rasengan. It took half a year more for Lucario to get the Rasengan as big as it is now. This newer version was named the Ultra Big Ball Rasengan. The Ultra Big Ball Rasengan is currently the most powerful version of the Rasengan in terms of both power and destructive force. It is mainly meant to be used on stronger opponents so as to take them or weaken them considerably. By breaking up the learning process into 3 stages and having Lucario make the Rasengan a lot larger, I have achieved one of my goals, preventing other Pokemon from using this move against me. Naruto had to stop his explanation about the Rasengan because a question was asked. Forgive me for interrupting, but what would happen if a person ordered their Pokemon to use a move such as Mirror Move against the Rasengan? Asked a curious Cynthia. Should other trainers order their Pokemon to use techniques such as Mirror Move to mimic the Rasengan, then they are in for a rude awakening, as it will not succeed due to the way the Rasengan was built, said Naruto as he finished his extremely long explanation. Sure, the ex-Konoha Genin knew that he had changed certain parts of the Rasengan's background, but it was needed. Well, he couldn't just tell the others that his deceased father, who was from another universe, which was full of ninja, created the technique now, could he? At least some of what he said was true. Naruto had to work really hard to make sure that he taught his Lucario his father's original technique using a method that was compatible with the Aura Pokemon. Naruto had to actually come up with a way which would allow Lucario gain a certain level of control in the manipulation of its aura before his loyal Pokemon could learn a somewhat similar version of the A-rank ninjutsu. Naruto noticed that the room had become really quiet, too quiet for that matter. So Naruto took a look at the few people who were in the room. His eyes turned to Scott and Brandon. Then to Ash, Dawn and Brock. After that his eyes wandered to Cynthia and Paul. Naruto noted that they were all currently strewn in their own respective thoughts. Some were in deeper contemplation than others. Though this was not to say that Naruto was not expecting something like this to occur. The people back in the Shinobi universe also sung praise about the Rasengan far and wide, and that was when it was used with chakra, which nearly every ninja was capable of utilizing. But in this world, Naruto had made his Lucario perform his father's original technique using aura. Also taking into account that the number of people who could use aura in the Pokemon world could be counted using the fingers in one hand, Naruto would be surprised if they could soak up all these new revelations like they did regular things. Naruto silently wondered if now would be a good time for him to act like a thief and quickly yet stealthily get away while the others were too distracted to notice. After a few short seconds, Naruto decided against it. There was no point. That, and Naruto had a feeling deep in the pit of his stomach that if he got up and left now, then it would just lead to more trouble. And that was the last thing he wanted. After a short while, Naruto could not take it any longer and burst out laughing as he fell to the floor and clutched both of his sides. This seemed to do the trick, as the others were now not thinking in their own world and were fully aware of their surroundings once more. "What's so funny?" asked Cynthia with a slight edge in her voice. Naruto couldn't tell if Cynthia was irked or if she was simply posing a question in a normal manner. Naruto put a hand over his mouth to prevent any remaining laughter that he had left from escaping his mouth, before taking a few deep breaths to recompose himself. Naruto wiped away a stray tear that was threatening to fall from his left eye, probably due to his laughing fit. He then turned towards the champion of Sinnoh with a neutral expression on his face. Nothing much, simply put I found it to be rather amusing to witness all of your reactions a moment or two ago, answered Naruto, his calm voice betraying how he felt inside. Anyone would be in the same position if they learned what the rest of us just did a moment. How do you keep coming up with stuff like this? Retorted a stupefied Ash. Can you keep a secret? Asked Naruto in a barely audible voice, which was just slightly above a whisper. Ash and the rest of the occupants in the room nodded before leaning in slightly to hear Naruto's reply. Naruto had an enormous shit-eating grin plastered on his face, or he would have if he did not use all of the willpower he had to keep it hidden from view. It would merely end up ruining what he was going to do next. Naruto really had to hand it to Sasuke's older brother, Itachi. The older Uchiha seemed to have a whole lot of self-control to be able to maintain that poker face everywhere he went. But Naruto could now see that there were many advantages to it, the poker face, as well. Once Naruto thought that there had been enough suspense, he decided to give the group their long-awaited answer. It is good to know that you all can keep a secret because so can I, said Naruto as in the same low tone of voice that he used earlier before bursting out into yet another set of giggles, which turned into full-blown laughter a short while later. Naruto made no attempt to suppress his enjoyment of the situation. There was no need to. He really was having the time of his life letting this side of himself loose. The prankster in him had not pulled a new prank in a while, but he guessed that this was good enough. The peeved faces that were half looking and half glaring at him would be testament to that. These facial expressions triggered Naruto's memories on how the people of the village hidden in the leaves would look at him with bloody murder every single time he pulled a prank as a child, be it the time when he pranked a simple food vendor or the time when he painted the Hokage monument in broad daylight wearing a bright orange jumpsuit. Naruto stopped his train of thought right there. All of that was in the past. Wallowing in self-pity over what could have been would prove to be pointless and an utter waste of time. He also did not want the others to know that he was feeling sad about something. And since when did Naruto Namikaze feel sorry for himself? He was stronger than that. Much stronger. While some of the occupants in the room were still a little bit agitated by the fact that they had been duped by Naruto, that thought was overshadowed by another which was revolving around the amount of intelligence and creativity that had been displayed by the former Hidden Leaf Genin. Just how strong is he, Naruto, actually? Was the question on everyone's minds. About 10 to 15 minutes later. After a short while, the hype on Naruto had died down for now, much to the aforementioned person's relief. The topic of discussion then switched over to Paul's Pokemon. And that is where we are now with Naruto and Cynthia praising Paul about his Pokemon. Paul, your Pokemon are all very well trained, stated Naruto. And I am especially impressed with your Torterra. It's frankly quite amazing, added Cynthia. Torterra was my very first Pokemon, stated Paul. That is incredible, said Dawn. You raised it from a Turtwig? Asked Brock. That is right. We have traveled a lot. We made our way through the Hoenn, Johto and Kanto leagues but did not manage to win any of them. It was also during that time that I caught Weevil, answered Paul. What about Chimchar? Asked Ash. I caught Chimchar after I came back to Sinnoh, answered Paul. You have done a lot with Chimchar in such a short time, praised Cynthia. So what? After all, Chimchar's performance against Naruto's Espion was atrocious if you remember, remarked Paul. Until you got hit with that Hyper Beam, I don't think you cared how many of your Pokemon took a fall. Cut in Ash, who seemed to have had enough of the crap that Paul was dishing out about his Pokemon. What is your point? Asked Paul. Come on. How do you think your Pokemon felt about that? Don't you get it, Paul? Winning that way is only a win for you, said Ash angrily as he gestured towards all of Paul's fallen Pokemon, whom were all now asleep and recovering from their recent battle. Oh, give me a break. A win is a win, said Paul. You will never win this way, Paul, retorted Ash. Pathetic. You just keep doing things your way. I will get stronger any way I choose, replied Paul, who was not in the least moved or bothered even after the thrashing that was sent his way earlier in the day. You want to get stronger, do you? Asked Cynthia out of the blue as both Ash and Paul looked at her closely. If you do, then there is something that I want to show you, continued Cynthia as her lips quirked upwards a bit. At Amity Square. Cynthia was currently standing in front of the same stone tablet which had pictures of Dialga and Palkia that she had inspected before her battle with Naruto. Naruto, Brandon, Scott, Ash, Paul, Brock and Dawn were gathered behind her. The words that are written on this tablet really changed my life. Listen while I read them. When every life meets another life, something will be born. When I was younger, I used to dream of nothing other than being victorious in battle. And so, I trained endlessly. Then I discovered that even the same types of Pokemon have unique personalities. At that very moment, I decided that I wanted to get to know each one of them better. After learning more and more of their ways, something completely new began to stir deep within my soul. I knew meeting new Pokemon was just like meeting new people. I am sure that because of our meeting today, something powerful has been placed inside each and every one of us. Something important. Something that will make us stronger in our own way. My desire to meet Pokemon has spawned a dream. That one day, I will actually meet the legendary Dialga and Palkia. Then, perhaps one day I will be able to travel back to the source and find the times and origin of all Pokemon," said Cynthia passionately as he gazed upwards towards the bright blue sky. Naruto silently admired Cynthia, who gave her silent speech, taking in the sight of beautiful form from afar. She really is one of a kind. I don't think I have met a woman like her before, thought Naruto to himself. I would be amazing to meet Dialga and Palkia, said Brock. It sure would, confirmed Dawn. The next day. Thus, one of the most eventful days was concluded. Now we find Cynthia talking to Scott with Ash, Brandon, Dawn, Paul and Brock listening on intently in silence. Naruto just left a little earlier. Cynthia. He said that he had somewhere to be, so he wanted to get a move on and did not intend to waste any time, said Scott. Cynthia let out a frustrated sigh. Darn it! Cursed Cynthia in her mind. There went that idea. After Naruto handed Cynthia the lustrous orb last night, though he did it discreetly and also placed the orb in an opaque black briefcase to avoid others knowing about it, Cynthia had been planning on asking him if he would like to accompany her when she left for Celestic Town the next day. She thought that it would be a good idea to introduce Naruto to her grandmother, Professor Carolina. Cynthia knew that the two of them, Naruto and her grandmother, would probably get along quite well. The two of them could even exchange some information and expand each other's knowledge on certain subjects. Not to mention that, the journey there would give her more opportunities to figure out a little bit more about the enigma that was Naruto Namikaze. It seemed that her hopes had been dashed. Did Naruto perhaps say where he was going? Inquired Cynthia. No, he didn't. I'm sorry, replied Scott as he shook his head negatively. Before I forget, there are some words of advice that Naruto wishes to pass on to the rest of you, interrupted Brandon. As several sets of eyes turned his way, Brandon decided to continue and pass on his blonde-haired friend's message. A man does not have to live 100 years to be remembered for 100 years. Do something good in one day that will cause you to be remembered by the world for 100 years. This was a saying that Naruto asked me to tell you all to think about. He wishes you all luck with whichever path each one you choose. He also said that he looks forward to meeting every one of you again, said Brandon as he looked over at each one of their faces, able to see that they all currently had different thoughts on their mind. Scott and Brandon had departed shortly later, and the others followed soon after. Ash, Dawn and Brock headed off to Hearthome City while Cynthia made her move to deliver the lustrous orb back to her grandmother in the Celestic Town Research Center. All the while the Sinnoh champion's mind was on the spiky blonde-haired man that she had met during the previous day. Though unaware at the time, Cynthia could not help but feel eager to meet him again. And she was not alone in this. Ash, Dawn, Brock and Paul could not wait for their next encounter with one of the last living Uzumaki clan members as well. But alas, most of the people Naruto met always ended up being interested with the unique personality that he had. Thanks for watching this video. You really enjoy this video. Like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow XXX-Rated for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.